The part I was most excited about was working with the camera, right? And I was surprised almost at how much I loved working with the actors, you know, which is like a silly thing to say because I am an actor, but I really was sort of mystified by, you know, what these guys were doing, and I suddenly understood why people love actors so much. And I was like, they're my film. The love from a director to an actor is kind of insane. To have these guys and Jake and Bill Camp, I was very lucky, and I was very lucky that they gave me their trust so that I was actually able to work with them from behind the camera. I wrote a first draft that was quite long and not in screenplay format. I secretly thought it was really good, but I gave it to Zoe and pretended I was like, oh, I know it's, you know, it's not good, and just read it. And then she just kind of tore it apart, and we got through about 5 pages of notes before we said that's enough of that.
And then I was like, I think you should let me rewrite this for you because you don't know what you're doing yet. And he'd never written anything before, and I had, and so he agreed to that, and I did a pass on it, and then we just passed drafts back and forth for about 3 years.
Yeah, we never wrote together, talk, daydream.
You know, because we both have these other lives as actors. One of us would go away for a job, and the other one would take the lead on writing for a little while, and it was very organic. We've worked together many times, and the writing together was actually much easier than acting together.
The book is beautiful, and it really moved me, and he just captured something in it that about family that I love, which is, it's like one of the greatest sources of love, you know, we'll ever have in our lives, and it's also one of the greatest sources of struggle we can have in our lives. So somehow he captured that duality in a loving way, but in a hard way too. And you know, our job was, you know, how do you take internal life and make it into an image or into an action? And then, you know, Richard, when I wrote to him, gave us a great gift right away, which was, he just said, my book's my book and your picture's your picture, and it would, you know, not benefit either of us if you just tried to make the book. And so right away we were sort of given the keys to freedom, which I think we would have followed the scent no matter what, but it was really encouraging to hear that.
It's a short book, but there's so much packed into it. We didn't have to fabricate very much at all. In fact, the things we fabricated were mostly, you know, the difference between something being cinematic or something being literary. The bigger change is that the book is told from a first-person perspective, and we didn't use any voiceover or anything, so having to translate some of that into action or into scenes rather than into thoughts.
It was a triple threat of fear involved in working with people that I've known as friends for a decade. So that was, you know, it's always, when you're doing a play and your friends come and see it, it's kind of the worst night. Sure. You know, an anonymous crowd is easy, but friends is really hard. And then that they're both such extraordinary actors on their own adds another thing. Once I got past that self-hatred, I just knew instinctively that he was going to make a great film because his instincts are so good in what he does in his acting. But when it came to being directed, it was like we spoke the same language, which a lot of directors don't speak, because, so it was, it's really embarrassing talking about you in a nice way.
Yeah, it is.
Are you embarrassed? Well, I'm kind of embarrassed, but I want, you know, but it was really amazing to be able to work with someone who kind of understands acting so well and understands like the holes that you get into when you can't understand something, or the, you know, or the problems that you have in the room, in the moment with that one line, and how all you can get stuck in a rut of playing something in a way you decided in your mind, this is how it plays, this is how it plays. And he could see those moments and pull me out of them and give me new thoughts and tiny pointers in one direction or the other that would completely change the scene. And so in that sense, it was just, and in every sense it was brilliant, but in that particular sense, it was like, oh, we speak the same language, this is great.
Yeah, you're right, you do kind of speak the same language, and it just feels different to any other director that I've worked with. Not that I've worked with like a lot, but it definitely feels different. Like there's this, yeah, like you just get each other.
There was even a time that I was like, oh, how do you think I should do that? And you went, I don't know, how do you think you should do it? And I was like, I don't know, I'm not supposed to decide this kind of thing, this is your job. But it was really cool. It definitely kind of gave the reins, like, you know, as a young actor, you're kind of like, well, I'm kind of gonna do what the director says from my direction, and that was just something different that I'd never experienced, you know, somebody saying, I don't know, what do you think the character should be thinking? I was like, I don't know. No, but it was really great.
We optioned the book ourselves, so we hadn't brought anyone on. So that was also a process of like finding the right producers.
Yeah, and that felt important at the time, just to protect the book, even, you know, in case the film didn't have, you know, I just didn't want our script owned by somebody else at that point. And we brought on producers, and I have to say, you know, I feel like Zoe and I probably have a slight advantage over a first-time filmmaker, you know, by being actors and whatever. But it takes such an incredible amount of energy and just will to make a movie happen. And so I wouldn't say it was easy, but I also feel like we were able to get it done.
There was like an 18-month period where it felt like Paul was just like pushing a rock up a hill every single day. And we had other jobs that we had to attend to. But you know, in order to make it happen, you have to believe that it's going to happen, and you have to work in a way where you're like betting on yourself and betting on the future. But you know, our financing came together like rather late. We had a pretty short prep period. So 12 weeks before we were actually shooting, we had no idea whether we would be shooting that fall, and Paul had set aside this period of time to not act and to direct. So I don't know, I always think about the belief that you had. It's like Olympic athletes have to visualize themselves. Like it's like an impossible thing to get a movie made. So every time, I feel like it's given us both new appreciation in some way. Like when we see a film, we're like, I think we're much more generous audience members because we know how hard it is to get anything made.